Hey, hello. If you're new here, my name is Rain. If you're not new here, welcome back. I really appreciate you stopping on by to my little corner of the internet. And in today's video, I'm going to be planning out thumbnails and color schemes and showing you guys the final sketch for the next painting that I plan to do, which will be in theme with the plant zombie from my week before last video. So it'll be more of my original world and original character designs. So if you're interested in that, I'd really appreciate it if you take the time to watch this video all the way through. I do want opinions on the color schemes that I draft up. If you're interested in contributing to your thoughts in the comments when we get to that part of the video, I would also really appreciate it. And now, plot-wise, this is going to be my kind of final project for this month's residency for the summer session of my MFA. I'm probably not going to finish it in time for it to be completely done by Monday's critique, seeing as it is Friday now, and I am still just on the sketching phase. Don't plan to even start coloring it until like Sunday, but that's fine. I don't have too much time off before the fall residency starts, which is a lot longer than the summer residency, so it's okay. Worst comes to worst, I end up finishing it for my fall residency at the beginning of my fall residency. But I just have been feeling a lot more inspired recently to exist in my own universe and play within my own worlds a little bit more than I think I have overall on my channel. Like the net kind of way I've approached character design and talked about my OCs. I think it's like now that I'm really finding my greatest like intrigue in it, and I'm really like enjoying the exploration more than I ever have before. I'm feeling a lot more enticed by expanding the worlds and actually maybe working on some comics and actually kind of cementing some things conceptually so that it's easier for other people to kind of understand what's going on in my mind, which has been a really exciting feeling recently. And I'm overall just beyond stoked that I've been feeling so inspired and all of that, and your guys' support on my video where I did do a one of my plant zombies, and I really took the time to talk about the general theme of them more in depth finally, has been amazing, and I'm really appreciative of all of the love and the thoughts and the comments and all of the people who are feeling inspired by my own concept and the people who have presented suggestions on different ways to approach ideas. I have a lot of stuff I need to explore now in terms of how I want to approach the world and how I want to kind of conceptualize certain components and explain certain components, things like clothing. I am thinking about having clothing for at least some part in this final piece, but I really do have to like take the time and think, does clothing make more or less sense? Generally, when I was originally conceptualizing this as a theme, these plant zombies, people who are dead and possessed or kind of taken over by these parasitic fungi and plant things and creating them and turning them into sentient ecosystems effectively, I originally have more gruesome intentions for how they ended up deceased and more kind of violent ends that they're met. But somebody had this really interesting comment about how if people were to be kind of more aware of this illness and how they exist, people would want to prepare and kind of approach the death and the ending of their life in a way where they can have more dignity to it. And I am really interested in how people would approach preparing for this type of afterlife as well, because originally as existed in my intentions and how I was kind of conceptualizing it was more so that these people meet their ends in the woods, and that is where the fungi, the parasites, kind of get a hold of them as an individual and turn them into ecosystems. And so I didn't really think about these as individuals that can like actually exist and have autonomy within the human waking world anymore. And I never really considered, what if we had a coexistence with the dead and the living between these? And that brings up really interesting concepts in regards to like overpopulation and things like that. But originally I was intending these to be more secretive, kind of just almost fairies kind of thing, like forest spirits and nymphs. Nothing that would be known by the like civilized society, and something that people could either look forward to or fear for their own afterlife and things of that nature. Rather, as creatures who get a second chance at life after it was taken prematurely, through kind of being a steward for the forest and a nymph, and doing their services and getting to live life in a more natural and self-sustaining way, being able to photosynthesize and having plants that kind of rely on you for soil or for like a hold. And so that's kind of where I'm originally intending it. However, I really like the idea of how would people prepare to have this kind of fate, and how would people want to prepare their loved ones for this fate? If people were aware of this as a possibility, would people ask for it? Would people fear it? Would people force it upon their loved ones, if they're taken before what they wanted, you know? It really ties in to an extent with my original character, Vivian, and kind of how he came to his really unfortunate immortal existence, how he was trying to cure his wife of her chronic illness several hundred years prior, and things of that nature, and how he had become immortal and lost her to kind of time and fate, because he couldn't save her, but he extended his life in the process. And so it is very interesting to kind of consider how that could be navigated, and what happens if you do kind of force this fate upon a loved one and they don't want it and they are upset with you, and how do you navigate that and consenting to it, and how it would be legalized and things like that, which maybe is perhaps a little bit too expansive world building wise for just something kind of conceptual that I'm working on. You know, I'm not a writer. I'm not really any good at it. While I do love writing, I definitely don't have the capacity to make a interesting story, and so perhaps legalization of forcing your loved ones to be taken over by plant parasites and becoming a human ecosystem is a little bit too in-depth for something that I'd be any good at, but it is something that's really enticing to think about, and it does bring up kind of a more philosophical and moral question that I'm just interested in on a personal level. Kind of, what would I want? What would my personal loved ones want? What would I want for a loved one who passes prematurely, things of that nature? And would I be selfish enough to make the decision to subject them to a fate like that? Because in my opinion, immortality is a horrible, horrible thing, and a horrible fate, and absolutely not something that somebody should want, you know, to outlive everyone you love, and to be forced to experience the continued corruption of society, and centuries upon centuries of wars, and maybe the destruction of our planet and all of that, is something that I personally am just absolutely not interested in ever having. And that's kind of why I have my kind of immortal characters, because I do think that there's a lot to like unpack with the curse of immortality and the trauma that comes from it, and learning to accept a continued and unpleasant existence and refined love and devotion, and how does it harden a person, how does it corrupt the capacity for affection and things of that nature, and do you continue that existence and things of that nature. And ultimately I just find it something that on a personal level, I find very interesting to explore how that can hurt and frame the behavior of an individual. And that's kind of why I have my immortal in OC, or allegedly immortal. I'm open to the idea that Vivian extended his life only to a certain extent and not for an eternity, and that's something to explore. Has he only expanded his lifespan 500 years? Does he have 300 left to live? Things of that nature. Is there a way to undo it? Those are all questions that I need to kind of pursue when I have a more firm plotline for how I want them to exist, because I have scenes that I value and I want to illustrate and draw, but I've never really thought about an end to my original character stories, which is something that I'm really impressed with when it comes to authors and people who create literature. How do you accept that there's an end to a story, and how do you say goodbye to your characters and the life that they lived, that you created in that capacity? It's something that I don't really have the I don't know how to articulate it. I don't have the ability to do. I don't know how to let go and actually create an end and perceive an end. And so I've never really actually gone through the process of making a plot line where there is inevitably an ultimate end to it, right? Because how do you say goodbye? And do you have to say goodbye? Does it go on forever? Do you get to be like James Patterson, where you just continue writing Alex Cross books forever and people continue to love it 10, 20, 30 books later with no sign of an end? Or do you quit while you're ahead and say goodbye and create a finalized state and make that decision? I don't know. It's something that I don't know that I've ever really considered, especially considering Vivian lives within the same realm and universe within my head as my OC, Nameless. And Nameless is originally kind of my self-insert OC. That's how she came to be. And so Nameless is a character that I don't know ever can leave my my general like portfolio of characters, my hall of, I don't know, my hall of fame, my anthology of characters, I don't know, my collection. She's not someone I can see an end to, because I'm still attached to her in a way that, while she's become something new from what she was, 5 years ago, she is the start of a hobby that has become a passion that is now something I wish to pursue educating in. I want to make my career art education, and so I very much don't know how and if there is a point where it's appropriate to just say this is the end of her story, when her story for a long time was my very existence, illustrated and kind of encapsulated. I guess it's a very interesting concept. Do you get rid of OCs when they have that sort of importance, and kind of what happens to the OCs that you do inevitably kind of forget about? I'm sure I have a ton of OCs in my old sketchbooks that I don't even remember. I know I have an OC named Adrian. I haven't drawn him since the sketchbook I created him in, and what do they mean for your growth as an artist and your kind of expansion of yourself put onto the page? I don't know where I'm going with this as a concept. I just find it really, really interesting to think about. What do you do with it, and is it appropriate? Should you hang on to OCs even once they've perhaps ran their course? I have no idea. And maybe in like 5 years have created so many OCs other than Vivian that it'll feel appropriate to give him an end to his story and an end to Eris's story, but for now it's just something that's not foreseeable. Like, I don't know how to approach that. And I feel that way not necessarily about any of the character designs that I've made so far for my zombie plant people, but it is to an extent where I'm at with the concept and the designed thing. I very much value Greek, Norse, and Roman myth, particularly for how they portray things in nature and entities that are meant to kind of embody nature. And with that, I think that characters and designs that portray elves and nymphs and druids and dryads and things of that nature are really hard for me to let go of, because it's so entwined with how I like to perceive an idealized world, an idealized existence. I wish we had something in our world that existed solely to protect our nature and our environment and our planet and our flowers and everything of that nature. The nature of nature. Wow. I need to expand my vocabulary. But I think when it comes to characters like this, I also partially design them out of a inability to find a better way to advocate for what I think we need in the world, which is better policy and more dedication to protecting our planet and our plants and everything, you know, not killing things, not deforesting, not industrializing and expanding and modernizing everything to the point that is almost becoming unrecognizable, if that makes sense. And so, to an extent, these characters are also kind of my own embodiment of what I wish could happen as a method for trying to protect the thing that means the most to me. One of the things that means the most to me, which is the plant life that we have. And that came up with a very, very fun conversation with one of my MFA professors that I had to meet with earlier this week, or earlier last week, apologies, where we were discussing kind of plants and gardening, and she also is a huge fan of gardening. She has multiple acres, a perennial garden and things like that, and we were kind of discussing how it would almost be our just deserved as a people if plants were to rise up and consume us, if plants were to almost have their own villain arc from how much we've destroyed kind of natural environments, biodiversity, things like that. And so I am really interested in perhaps pursuing a offshoot of this, a more dystopian, a post-apocalyptic future in which plants did win the battle against humanity. And we were joking that, like, actually it was all villainous carnivorous plants that killed the dinosaurs and things like that. And it's really funny as a concept to think about plants, the plants that tower over us, but also that we just crush beneath our feet all the time, you know, like grass, to think of it as something that can, like, consume us and conquer over us. And I'm very interested in exploring post-apocalyptic plant Earth sometime as well, and perhaps more carnivorous plant-themed drawings and parasitic plant-themed drawings. That's what my passion was in botany, particularly, was carnivorous and parasitic plants. I find them incredibly interesting, and particularly I think what it is that we don't talk about them a lot in the general education for, you know, younger kids when they're learning about photosynthesis, but also as we get older, we don't really talk as much about carnivorous plants beyond, like, the Venus flytrap, right? And maybe mistletoe is something that's highly parasitic, but we don't really talk about just how many other plants can rely on digesting things as opposed to photosynthesizing for their survival, which is something that I just find really innately interesting, and I'm excited for the kind of possibility of exploring more artistically, which is something I'm really interested in knowing if you guys have any form of interest in or are enticed conceptually in the idea, or have recommendations for media that kind of encapsulates that feeling either, because I find it really interesting and I would like to explore it some more. And I don't even know how much this actually like fits in theme with like the stuff that I've been doing on my channel over time. I feel like I don't even know where I'm going artistically, just that I'm doing what excites me and you guys are coming along for the ride. And so I do want to inquire, and I do highly value and want to know what you guys are interested in seeing and what components of my original characters, if any, you guys want to know more about. Do you want to get to know Vivian, Nameless, Eris, and kind of all of the works and so on? So be sure to let me know in the comments if you do want to get to know my characters a little bit more effectively. But now actually getting to like the art of the video, I really need to get better at sandwiching my videos, so it's like art, weird general discussion, and then art, because I guess I could have talked about my thumbnails more and kind of what I was thinking, but I just rambled and instead saved it for the section about like the colors. But I feel like my thumbnail process isn't particularly interesting. I do like the floating character that I did really big and then thumbnailed a little bit more with the kind of wilted sunflowers. I'm thinking kind of like really droopy daisies, but yellow, maybe white, I don't know. I really like yellow flowers in more macabre pieces, which is kind of what I'm going for. I do want to kind of implement more of my digital style color palette wise into this traditional piece. I want it to be more dark and brooding because that's generally what I find really interesting, and so the thumbnails don't, or my color schemes don't completely perfectly capture how dark I want to go, but they're mostly meant to figure out the color palette and not necessarily the intensity per se. It'll make more sense as we get a little bit further into the color schemes, but generally I like it, but I didn't know that it was going to take up compositionally exactly how I wanted it to, and I didn't really want to play around with floating characters too much and collecting a reference, so that one kind of ended up out. And then the close-up of the face, it definitely fits the macabre feeling that I wanted to go for, but I wanted to capture more of the body and kind of explore how I want plants to grow from it a bit more before I do like portraiture type stuff with it. That was kind of just a general not super in the mood. Also, I just feel like I wasn't drawing the faces super good. They weren't vibing with me how I wanted them to, and so I just decided to scrap it. I just didn't feel like it was going to turn out how I wanted it to. The more full torso right about to the hip, under the pelvis kind of area, it just was turning out a lot better in all of the sketches I was doing. The sketch I have now on the left page, where I was kind of exploring possible clothing and a bigger composition, I do want to do this one for maybe just fun with some casual paint markers as well, with a full outfit. The final sketch I ended up doing before the color thumbnails, which you'll see at the very end of the video, I did end up leaving the skirt off. You can't see it super well. This green colored pencil just does not show up super well on camera for some reason, but I did end up leaving the skirt off because it was cut off, and I felt like it was kind of detracting from what I wanted the piece to capture, so that's kind of neither here nor there. But when it came to my first thumbnail versus my second one, color scheme wise, I'm thinking maybe a mostly complementary color palette for that first one, maybe a hint of purple, but mostly everything being in kind of deep and medium tone blues with just kind of a more yellowish flesh. Something that feels more so like a yellow light is reflecting off of the skin and having that blue maybe incorporated a little bit more effectively. Predominantly the skin I want to read kind of yellowish in tone as opposed to that blue, and I want it to kind of stand out that way. However, equally, I am really open to doing a more pastel and playful color palette. I know that my traditional style generally tends to lean more vibrant, more hyperpop, more joyful in colors, where my digital work tends to be my darker work. And so I did want to explore just a very, very simple medium tone background with really vibrant flowers, light enough skin that it kind of is standing out against a darker hair, which will contrast well with the medium kind of background. I'm overall not a huge fan of it. I think I want the skin tone to be at least a little bit deeper, or the background to be a little lighter so the hair sticks out better, maybe like pure black hair or a super deep blue, like, well, I could do like a Coraline kind of blue hair, right? That would look nice, but I don't know, it just felt not quite right. I think the color palette works a little bit more effectively though if the character were laying back into the background and it was like grass, since it is kind of it's kind of not picking up super well on camera, but the color is kind of a brown, olivey green kind of color. It's technically a green, but it doesn't super look like it very well, and so I think that color palette suits more for laying in the grass. I think it would stand out a lot better if like the hair was kind of flowing, grass blades were coming up through it, and flowers were more encompassing the character as opposed to standing up and the flowers coming out of them. It's more of a how do I say it? Maybe like a playful fall kind of theme. I don't know. It just wasn't as intense as I wanted it to be. Similarly, the third one with the bright pink background and the kind of skin color with the brownish, bluish, I believe it was actually blue, the blue hair, it just wasn't working right, and I felt as I was going through the top 3, I cared less and less about actually kind of capturing what I wanted it to, and just getting the colors out there so I could say I did it and moved on. The first one really was just my better of my thought processes for the theme, and the more I kind of tried to make it vibrant, the less I seemed to care about the actual colors that I was thinking about, the less enthused I felt like I was being about the kind of general theme that I was going with. And that's why I did 3 small ones and 4 big ones, because I feel like my first 3 usually capture my initial 3 ideas well enough that I can then look at the 4 or couple of other big ones and actually kind of think a little bit harder. So what did I like about this one that I didn't like about the other one? Or what do I like from this that I don't really like from that? I like the dark background in one. I don't like how yellow I made the skin, right? Now I like the medium toned background, but not how it blends in with the hair, right? So too similar in tone there. And so it kind of gives me those things that maybe I want to work through a little bit. I don't want the hair to blend into the background. I want the character to stand out a little bit more effectively from that. I don't want the background to be demanding. That is because the character is a person with plants growing out of them. It's a very busy character, right? And so I don't want the background to have any attention-grabbing components to it. I want it to complement, but I do not want it to kind of draw your attention. I want it to be nice and pleasant. I do not want you to look at it and be like, oh wow, look at this thing back there. I can't really see it though past the flowers, and now I'm kind of curious and I want to know more. That's not where I'm going with these thematically. I need to understand how I want to balance the line between the plants on the people and being too much versus too little. feeling proper and thematic, but not necessarily how I want them to exist within universe, right? I'm not an animator. I don't have to worry about animating all of these flowers moving on this person, thankfully. And so I don't really have to concern myself too much about them fitting into backgrounds right now. I can just enjoy it as a concept and figure out how I feel about it. And so with that, I then went for a little bit more of a medium skin tone, not super medium. It's probably the most medium skin tone that I have of these Tombow brush markers. I very rarely use them for skin, usually for accents, with a pretty pinky orangey blush to complement kind of the just gestured out plants in the background and kind of feel out, do I like it? Do I want the blush to complement kind of the stuff existing within the background? And I mean, it's okay. I think that I need the skin tone to stick out a lot from the lightest and the deepest of the flowers, so a medium is probably going to be what I go for. A medium or really harsh purple shadows and really stark lighting I think would be very complementary. One of the biggest issues that arose with this thumbnail was that my background color just was too similar in value kind of to a lot of what I was going for, like my accent background color and that yellow on the skin, and then blending in with the purple. It just felt like it wasn't quite right. So not the background deep purple, which did blend too much with the hair, but the yellow that I was putting in there to complement the purple, it was just too similar in kind of tones to the, not tone, but value. If you squint, you can't tell where the yellow and the skin separate, right? They all kind of look like and blend into one, which just isn't particularly appealing. It isn't what I wanted. And so I need to find a different way to kind of implement and think about adding a yellow to a skin if I want it to be in a purple background, which I am pretty open to. I like that kind of mauve-y purplish tone, not mauve-y. It's not a wine, it's like musty grape juice. I don't know how to articulate it, to be honest. But it's just really like not great, but I think it would be really nice for a Halloween themed piece. I think the orange and the yellow and the purple would look great for a kind of witch in the woods kind of thing, which, you know, we're getting close enough to October that I think I might start working on some more spooky themed art pretty soon. So, you know, I'm saving that thumbnail for that color scheme wise for sure. I think it looks really, really nice. The hair will have to be a different color just because it blends in too much. I want it to look nice, maybe a black. But that's that. Then for I had somewhat given up at this point where I just really wasn't feeling great about the thumbnail color choices that I was making. My color pickings just did not feel like they were working out how I wanted them to. And with that, I kind of was letting go. I was just kind of thinking, okay, put random colors down and let's see how I feel. Which is very, very funny right after my I Took Color Theory So You Don't Have To video. Where I discussed how I hate color harmonies. But I like the way orange and purple look together personally, and blue and orange are complementary. And so I was like, I'm gonna put them down. It's a color scheme that I personally really like. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna see how I feel about it. And I like the gradient. I like the way I decided to take the blue and blend the hair so it was kind of a purple to blue gradient across the skin, where the skin would be. And I have already expressed that I'm very interested in doing abnormal skin tones. And I think a blue, a very, very, very light blue, like ghostly see-through kind of blue, is a viable option. And I think purple and orange is a little bit too intense. However, I feel good about the skin, the blue skin. So not a complete wash of a thumbnail, but definitely not quite capturing what I want yet again. So I think, okay, fine, go to the far end of the spectrum of color I very rarely work in, which is red. I used to work in red a lot because I did a lot of Phaeton from Hunter x Hunter fan art, but I feel like it's really my go-to. It's a very, very intense and lovely color, and because of that I feel like I overuse it. I feel like I need to be more casual in my usage of colors that are super intense like red, and I don't know when to stop, and so I just don't do it at all to try and kind of prevent myself from going too far. And because of that, I was like, what's neutral, what's going to be fine, what's not going to be too super distracting. So I go green, full complementary, and I just start working on little blotches of that mossy texture that I had used in my week before last full illustration, where I'm just like, okay, what if the skin is just completely covered in moss at this point? There's very little skin left to be recognizable. The plants are kind of short, more shrubby, not as many flowers. What if I just kind of treat them more like they are a bush at this point, a human-shaped bush? And so I think that has a lot of viability. I was very careless with the kind of skin tone that I put down, letting it smear in the green. Maybe that can be part of the photosynthetic component that I was talking about, how I want the skin to be capable of photosynthesis, or maybe not, we'll see. And then the kind of yellowy orange hair was kind of like a throwaway decision. I don't really like drawing blonde hair. I hate drawing blonde hair. It's something I really do not enjoy doing personally, and so it was so like it was just kind of a throwaway decision. I would probably choose a different color, especially something that kind of like can combat that stark red a little bit more, and I think that that might be black. Then I was like, okay, we're full green, we're fully photosynthetic, we are the plant now. Looks like the Grinch if the Grinch was a girl, and that is a horrible decision and a concept that I am not personally a fan of. But that's okay, because that's what color thumbnails are for, right? Red hair ended up giving poison ivy energy, which was also really not my vibe. And not that I'm opposed to poison ivy, I just don't think I execute it well at all. And I don't think red and green is my least favorite complementary pairing personally. I just feel like it's just not something I enjoy. However, the purple background, once again, is such a hit. I love this shade of purple. It's perfect for me. It very much is just my ideal tone of purple. My ideal purple in general. So, you know, it's okay, but I just am not a fan of the red and green for some reason. I don't want to say it's because of Christmas, but it might just be that Christmas has made me so unbelievably biased against red and green that I can't let it go, even when I don't even know why I'm so pissed about it. But it's just not for me. I don't like it, and so I'm leaning the furthest away from the color setup of thumbnail 7. It's the one that has attracted me the least, and overall, I think my favorite are 1, 2, and 4. I would really like to know what you guys think. If you have any color schemes that you think would be particularly appealing, and you think would suit it better, let me know. And these are for the dominant colors, to be clear. I don't think I articulated that, but these are for the dominant colors. The plants are going to have a lot more variety. The flowers are going to have a lot of variety to them, and they're gonna be their little accents, but these are for like the main colors that like catch your eye. If you had to pick the top 3-ish, these are what they would be, right? So there's going to be a lot more nuance. It is going to look a lot more like a botanical garden threw up on it, maybe some confetti, I don't know. But yeah, it was more so my way of kind of approaching the general theme and how I wanted to catch the feeling and the mood that I'm hoping to achieve, which is a bit more of a dark and depressing theme. my last one was more vibrant and more playful in color, and so I want this one to kind of capture the more depressing feelings that I think would be evoked from this kind of environment, right? Being dead and then taken over by a parasitic entity and becoming an ecosystem. So I want to kind of catch a more macabre feeling thing. Vibrant colors are great, and I feel like I can like attach that story to it. But this one I want to try and execute the feeling with the colors as well. And that's kind of a personal challenge for me, just because I've already discussed it. My traditional art's a lot more colorful, and so it's also just something to kind of push me out of my comfort zone and force me to, I don't know, not be me. That's a horrible way of describing it, but if you've been here for a minute, you know what I'm talking about. So if you like any of these, let me know. If you hate all of them and have a better idea, definitely let me know, because that's probably what I actually need. But I suppose this has encapsulated a lot of my thoughts. So if you have any particular thoughts about kind of whether this be post-apocalyptic, whether people prepare for these fates, whether they be really unfortunate tragedies or a second opportunity at life, I'm very interested in other people's thoughts and opinions on the matter, because I think that's how we expand our own personal horizons, is by collecting as many ideas and analyzing them as much as possible. And so I would love to know about that, the colors, thematically, if you have any thoughts. So that being aside, this is the final sketch, and if you have any thoughts on this before it actually goes into the coloring phase, I'm also interested in that. Otherwise, like if you like, dislike if you dislike, comment, share, subscribe if you want to see more of my content, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, night, wherever you are, and with that being said, bye-bye!